Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place.
In a world that's changing so quickly, the biggest risk you can take is not taking any risk. And I really think that that's true, right? I mean, a lot of people, I think that, whenever it comes to, whenever you get yourself into a position where you have to make some big shift in direction or do something, there are always people are going to point to the downside risks of that decision. And locally, they're maybe right? I mean, for any given decision that you're going to make, there's upside and downside. But in aggregate, if you are stagnant and you don't make those changes, then I think you're guaranteed to fail, right? And not catch up. So to some degree, I think it's really right that over time, the biggest risk that you can take is to not take any risks.
It wasn't so long ago that, I was a student and, sitting in a seat in an auditorium like you guys are here today, listening to, I remember very specifically this time when Bill Gates came to talk at Harvard, and I was just like, wow, how do you do that? But, the trick is that the media likes to sensationalize this as if you have some eureka moment or you are some singular person who can build something on your own, and that's just not how the world works. When I was in school, I built a lot of stuff that I just liked building. There was not a single moment when I had some revelation that Facebook was going to be awesome. That's not maybe how the media or movies or whatever would like to portray things. It's much less exciting. But the reality is, I think most services in the world that reach the scale that Facebook has, you start off building something that you care about, and you don't necessarily think it's going to be that big. I didn't. I built Facebook, the first version of Facebook, for my college community because I wanted to be able to connect with the people at my school. And I remember very clearly talking to my friends at the time and saying, how cool is it that we have built this community for our school? One day it's going to be awesome when somebody else builds this for the world because something like this needs to exist for the world. But it didn't even occur to me that, my friends and I might be able to play a role in doing that, right? Because we were college students, right? I mean, we didn't have any engineers to work with or servers or resources or anything like that. And, there are these huge companies that deliver products for hundreds of millions of people, right? I always assumed that it was going to be like Microsoft or Google or someone would build this for the world. And what basically just happened is at each step along the way, we just kind of kept doing the next thing and growing from there. And, there were teams inside these other companies that thought social media was important and were working on it. But there were all these different memes and narratives in the world. People would say, oh, well, this is just a fad. People are going to use it, but then they're going to stop. So, so a lot of the teams who were working on didn't take it that seriously, or, the higher-ups in those companies didn't care, so they didn't get resources, and we just kept going and going. And then people would say, all right, fine. So maybe people are using it, but it's never going to make any money, right? I mean, social media doesn't make any money. And we just kind of kept going and going, and then pretty soon we had a service that was bigger than any of these other ones, and that kind of is how we are here where we are. There's no magic. A lot of times I think people just get afraid because often your dream is, it seems like it's so far off, but if you just kind of focus on building stuff that you think is good and you keep on going at each step along the way and don't let people deter you from that, and you just really care about what you're doing and kind of don't give up at each step along the way, then I think that's how you build something good.
Probably a lot of people who can run Microsoft and do a reasonable job. When I was growing up, Bill Gates was my hero.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
He's like Darth Vader. He's not Luke Skywalker.
No.
He's the bad guy.
No, he is not. Bill Gates ran one of the most mission-driven companies that I can think of, right? And right now I think Microsoft, their mission is less focused than it used to be. But when I was thinking about what I wanted to be when I grew up, Microsoft I thought had a great mission. Put a computer on every desktop and in every office, right? Or maybe it was every desktop in every home. There are companies that define themselves by a way of doing things, right? There's like the HP way that I was talking about, and there are companies that define themselves by making a concrete change in the world. And Microsoft did that, and I have a huge amount of respect for him for doing that. And he pushed them, and it was an incredibly inspiring company during the time that he was doing that. I think that they still are doing a lot of things, but I think that they've lost some of the focus. And I don't know. I think he's like one of the greatest visionaries that our industry has ever had.
I built the first version of Facebook because it's something that my friends and I wanted to use at Harvard, a directory and a way to connect with the other people around us. And I didn't think at all that it was going to be a company. I remember very specifically the night that we launched the first version. I went out to get pizza with a couple of my friends who now work here, and and I remember really clearly we were talking about how one day we thought that someone was going to build a community like this for the world. And that would be some company, but it clearly wasn't going to be us. It wasn't even.
It didn't even occur.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even an option that we considered that it might be us. We just weren't focused on building a company back then. We were just building something that we thought would be useful at our school. With Facebook, there was just such, people loved it, right, and had such an intensity of using it. I think within a couple of weeks, 2/3 of students at Harvard were using it. And all these other students at MIT and other local universities were writing in asking us if we could open up Facebook at their school. So we kind of just followed that, right? And, again, I didn't set out, and, my roommates didn't set out to build a service that we were going to turn into a company, but we just kind of followed what people wanted, and that led us to expand it to all these other schools and eventually beyond schools, and to, at some point, once we'd hired a bunch of people, we decided to turn it into a company and go for this mission of connecting the world. But that's not where we started. I always think that you should start with the problem that you're trying to solve in the world, and not start with deciding that you want to build a company. Right? The best companies that get built are things that are trying to drive some kind of social change, even if it's just local in one place. More than starting out because you want to make a bunch of money or have a lot of people working for you or build some company in some way. So, I always think that this is kind of a perverse thing about Silicon Valley in a way, which is that, people decide often that they want to start a company before they even decide what they want to do. And that just feels really backwards to me. And, for anyone who's had the experience of actually building a company, that you go through some really hard things along the way. And I think part of what gets you through that is believing in what you're doing and knowing that what you're doing is really delivering a lot of value for people. And that's, I think, how the best companies end up getting made.
I think the media, there's a little bit of this cultural bias towards thinking that, one person does this, right? People say that, I built Facebook or Steve Jobs built Apple or whatever, but, that's really not true, right? We're people, we helped, but there were thousands and thousands of other people involved in building these things. And the reality is that as strong as any one individual is, no one person can deal with all the challenges that are going to get thrown at them in anything that you do. And one of the ways that I think we maintain resilience is by having co-founders and partners who complement our strengths and fortify our weaknesses and can kind of encourage us and give us a push to keep going when things are tough. And there's actually a lot of data on this that suggests that companies that get started with more co-founders are more likely to be successful. And it isn't quite clear exactly from that data why that's the case, although it is very clear in terms of the outcome for the startups that it is the case. But I would guess that the reason why that's the case is because of this resilience point. Where people who start something by themselves, I just think like there's no way that any one person can overcome all of the different things that you need to do to build a startup or take on any kind of other project in the world. But if you have 2 or 3 or 4 partners, then I don't know. I mean, maybe over time, one of them doesn't like it and drops out, but you still have enough strength on the team to power through all the challenges that you have, and that's kind of how you go. And you know, at Facebook today, one of the things that I always find a little bit funny is, again, that so much attention is placed on me as the person running the company, whereas I think, you know, people like Cheryl, who really, you know, is my partner running the whole business, or, you know, folks like Chris Cox, who run a huge amount of our product, or Mike Schrepfer, who's our chief technology officer and kind of make sure that a ton of what we're doing works, or Jay Parikh, who, you know, runs all of our global infrastructure and all the data centers around the world. We couldn't make Facebook work without those people. Right, and there were really hard days where I'm not sure what to do next, and they keep me going.
We've made a huge number of mistakes along the way. Right now, I always say, I just think we've made probably every possible mistake you could make.
Is there a decision that you've made that the people around you told you was a mistake, and you defied them, and you were right?
You know, I mean, the most famous one, I think, probably has to do with selling the company, right? I mean, in 2006,
right,
we had this opportunity to sell the company to Yahoo for $1 billion, and we turned that down. I think a lot of people at the time thought that we should sell the company.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I felt really strongly, and I think like now people generally think that was a good decision. A lot of people who I think build startups or companies think that selling the company or going public is this endpoint, right? It's like you win when you go public. And that's just not how I see it.
Back at Harvard, I am outside of my old dorm room, and this desk, minus the poster in the background, that is not my poster, and I would not have had a poster that cool. This is where my desk was, and this is where I programmed Facebook for. You know, it took me about 2 weeks to program to code the first version of this. It was a very simple version that I launched in February of 2004. So yes, I'm probably never going to be back here again in this specific room. But this has been a place where a lot of really special things happen in my life, and I'm really grateful to this place.